In this video we'll look at process mapping. A business process is a continuous cycle of monitoring, performance review, development and improvement. There are many stages in a business process. Monitoring to make sure it's working properly and it's appropriate, whatever the process is. Looking at its performance and looking for ways in which it can be developed and improved. So there are many aspects to looking at a business process. Business process mapping is an important approach which helps understand how a process works. So companies within their own manufacturing plants or within their own production centres may look at individual processes to try and gauge whether the process is working effectively or not. And this is the province of process mapping, and this is what we're discussing in this video. A process map is a graphic representation of how a business process is operated, the tasks, the activities, the roles and responsibilities of the workforce. So all of these various issues or components are fitted into a process map to see how the overall process is being conducted, whether it's appropriate, whether it's efficient, and what are the issues. So looking at some task, some process, say making a particular component or a particular product, if that is the nature of the business, making a particular component or product, then that is the process. Then the process may be looked at from looking at the various tasks that are undertaken to see if the tasks could be rationalized. Is it possible to do the tasks more efficiently? Combine them in some way perhaps. Look at the various activities that the workers are engaged in. Looking at the way they go about the work. Could it be restructured? Could it be reorganized in a more efficient manner? And look at the roles and responsibilities of the workforce. Who's in charge? Who's the line manager? What skills and competencies has the line manager got that are appropriate? So a process map is looking, in a sense, looking critically at a process to see what areas can be improved and to see how the process is being worked out, how the process is being produced. Now the purpose of a process map overlaps of course with what I've just been saying, but let's just make some notes related to this. First of all, it creates a clear picture of a work process. It looks at its activities, its output, performance and results. So just looking at a particular process, look at it critically, look at all of its activities, what's involved, how does the output emerge, what's undertaken in order to make the output, what's the performance of the team, what efficiencies are there inherent in the process, and in a sense what inefficiencies are obvious as well, what areas can be improved. So it outlines boundaries and all the steps involved in making the process work. So process mapping looks at all the boundaries of a particular activity and looks at what makes the process effective and in what ways can the process be improved. It allows management to measure performance and make improvements. So in a sense this is management critically looking at a process, looking at the metrics involved with the process, trying to get measurements of how effective the process is, how many items are produced per hour. Could that be improved if there was a reorganization in some way, or of different, perhaps the staff were differently deployed or were given extra training? So it's the management looking critically at the process to see what improvements can be made. A process map outlines a sequence of activities carried out. These activities illustrate steps involved from the input stage to the output stage. So the process map looks at all of the activities that go to make a particular process. So just taking the example we mentioned earlier, let's say it's making a particular component or a particular product. Then look at all of the stages that are necessary to make the product. Perhaps it needs raw materials. The raw materials will have to be acquired and put into the production system. It may involve machining, going from one machine to the next. It may involve polishing and very fine work, craft work at some stage. It'll involve packaging and distribution. So there are many stages in the production process, and what process mapping is doing is looking at the whole sequence of activities that are carried out to see where improvements can be made, and also just to get a picture of what's involved. A process map displays all of the activities in a graphical representation, and a successful process map must display directions of activities, flow of materials, information and documents. So a process map, generally speaking, it's a graphical representation. It's a picture of what's involved in a particular process, and it shows the direction of the activities, moving from one activity to the next. It shows the direction in which the product moves. It shows the flow of materials and the information that's required and the documentation that perhaps goes with the item as it goes through the various production stages. It illustrates all the various tasks associated within a process. So it looks at all of the tasks, because all of the tasks are deemed to be important. So it looks at all of them, how they fit together, what issues can be identified by looking at them critically in this manner and trying to capture their importance on this diagram, on this flowchart. Evidence of inputs, transformation and output. Essentially that's what the chart is looking at. It's looking at all of the inputs from various machines, from people, from the stores. It's looking at all of the inputs. Then it's looking at how the product is transformed as it moves through the production process. It starts as perhaps a piece of material, and at the end it's become a product that is the output of the activity, and a product which can be sold in the market. It shows the areas of improvements throughout the process and the various steps. So by looking at it in this way, by trying to capture this information, sometimes management can see gaps, they can see inefficiencies, they can see routines that can be improved. So it shows up areas for improvement. Now, the importance of process mapping. Well, a process can become costly if they're not understood. Coordination of employees and activities can create problems. So it's important that the management understand the processes and can see what's involved in the various processes. Otherwise, the management are ignorant of what's happening and are therefore not in a position to institute remedial measures if there's a breakdown or if there's an issue, because the management themselves would not know exactly what's happening. They need to have the process mapped. They need to know how the process works, how it fits together, what's involved in detail, so that if there is an issue they can intervene, and intervene precisely because they know where the issue arises. They have a process map. If processes are not measured, they cannot be improved. Well, generally speaking, that's true. Generally speaking, in industry, managers like to be able to measure and know how long it takes to conduct a particular activity and what's involved and so on. And in knowing this, they can try to make improvements. Of course, sometimes outputs are more artistic. They may have more design facilities or issues associated with them, and this means it's difficult to measure. So it depends. If the product is very much bespoke by the customer, if it's a unique product, then it's very difficult to get a process map. The product is so different to all the other products. It's a product required by a customer. It's perhaps a one-off activity. Therefore, it's not difficult. Sorry, it's not possible to have precise measurements. It's management may be involved trying to ensure efficiency throughout the process, but it's just a one-off. It's very difficult to measure. So it's possible with process mapping perhaps to identify current problems, identify bottlenecks if there are issues in the production process where perhaps some activities overload the situation, overload perhaps a machine. There's not enough of that machine and jobs have to wait for their turn to be processed. That indicates a bottleneck. There could be waste or delays or general areas of weakness in the system. So process mapping can flag up all of these issues. And that's what makes it useful. It's a measure of efficiency to forecast and to look at predictions. So the management's able to look at the process mapping, know exactly what's happening, know where there are bottlenecks or weaknesses, try to measure the efficiency of the system, know where the products have got to, the work in progress has got to throughout the production system. So it's possible for management to try to gauge the efficiency of the system with reference to the process map. And of course this could lead to greater efficiency. Management is able to intervene precisely and constructively, not just intervention for intervention's sake, intervention because it's required. The intervention is required to improve the system, and that's what the process map does. It illustrates precisely to the management what's going on. Now the types of process maps, well, there are two types of process maps techniques. There is the process flowchart, and there's also deployment flowchart, sometimes known as swim lane process map. Think of swimming in a lane, in a straight line. People swim in straight lines down the pool so as not to interfere with other swimmers. So swim lanes, and also of course think of competitions. The swimmers stay within their lane. So we have deployment flowcharts. We'll talk about it in a few moments, and process flowcharts. Let's look at the process flowchart to start. A basic sequence of activities and decision points. That's all it is. It's a sequence of activities and decision points. Which way to go when management have to make a decision. So there is a process. The process indicates what happens one process after the next, and that at some stage someone has to make a decision to do something or to do something else. And depending on what the decision is, they go in a different direction or go in some particular direction and then carry on in that direction. Now, the process follows a diagram of symbols which illustrates the flow of activities. And these symbols are standard symbols. These are ones that are used, and each of the symbols has a particular meaning. So for example, if we look at process chart symbols, well, if you look at the first one, is start and end point, which is basically a rectangle with rounded corners. The one under it is the type of activity in the process, which you see has got precise corners. It has square corners. And underneath we have decision point, which is like a diamond shape. The decision point is do something or do something else. Then we have the oblique rectangle, the one at the very bottom on the left, which is input or output. That's the data or material. The document created on the top right is that particular shape, and the next one down is delay, and then we have inspection, and we have move the activity, which is the arrow. So if we looked at how these fit together in a basic process map, we might see something like this. We have on the top, we have the order received, we create the document, order waits processing, the order is activated on the top right hand corner. Then it comes down and there's a decision point. Is the item in stock? Well, it's yes or no. No, it's not in stock. Well, in that case, schedule production, make it. Schedule production, then dispatch it, and dispatch and process documentation. Send out the item to the customer and produce the documentation to bill the customer and ensure that the customer receives the product. Go back to the decision point. Is the item in stock? Well, it could be. Yes, it is in stock. In which case we miss out production, which is simply dispatch and process the documentation. And for some reason I've reproduced that at the very bottom one as well. So we've got two of those. The last one, of course, being unnecessary. Now, the process flowchart. Well, the flowchart involves all activities and people working in and around the process. So a flowchart, the process flowchart, involves all the activities and people working in and around the process. And the following must be taken into account. The people who do the work. That's important. Important to know who's involved. The suppliers who contribute to the process. Sometimes items may be bought in from suppliers. It could be raw materials bought in, or it could be components are bought in. So who are these people that we buy from? Who are the suppliers? How reliable are they? What do they charge? And information about them. And also look at the customers who are interested in the output. Some customers are very important, big customers. Some maybe just trying out the product. All need proper care and attention. But it's important just to know who's involved in the supply stage and at the customer end. Also, it's good to know the managers who control and monitor the process. Who has responsibility for the process? Who's the departmental manager? Who's the line manager? In fact, who are the people who are working on it? Who are the workers who are involved in the process? And whereabouts in the process are they involved? Now that gives a more complete picture of the process. Now the second type I said earlier was called deployment. Deployment means allocating, deploying, allocating resources to particular tasks. Well, outlines who does what along the process and the communication between people and department. So this is the who does what, which workers are involved at which stages, which charge hand or foreman is involved at which stages, which manager is involved, where is responsibility passed along the whole process, who are involved, what's the communications between them, and how does the communication systems work, and how smooth is the whole process. A process is arranged so that tasks are linked to the people responsible. For example, management, employees, supervisors, etc. So the process should be arranged so that the right people are involved at the right stages. That the manager is involved perhaps at the decision stage. But the workers are involved during the manufacturing or the polishing or the packaging or the distribution, whatever it is. So the right people are involved at the right stages. It may sound like common sense, but it's important that it's written down, understood, and there's a clear picture in the management's mind about what is happening in that particular process. The individual can view who is responsible for each stage of the process, and that's important. It's important to understand who's involved at which stage, and if there's a breakdown, then it's possible to go speak to the person, find out what happened, because that may be an important diagnostic in fixing the issue and getting the whole system back up and running. What happened exactly at the point of break? So in order to do that, it's important to know who's involved and where they're involved. So different types of flowchart, for example the swim lane diagrams, which I'm not going to go into in great detail, but it's important to understand there are different types of flowchart, and the whole idea is to get a picture of the process and to map the process. If you're interested in the more detailed account of the swim lane one, that's an excellent website that we fell across when making this class. Now, production process. Well, let's look at a production process. We move from goods inwards to distribution. So we move from goods inwards. The goods inwards can be inspected. They go into stores. The stores go into manufacturing. Manufacturing goes to the completed goods and inspection, and then finally to distribution. Now, of course, it all depends on the philosophy of the business. It may be that the business is trying to run on a just-in-time basis, a JIT basis. So it tries to get in the goods and it misses out the stores, perhaps goes straight into manufacturing. So it may go from receipt of the goods straight into the manufacturing. That's, of course, if the company can implement a JIT policy and if it's felt to be desirable. But whether that's the case or not, we can just look at what we've got here on the screen, which is goods inwards all the way up to distribution. And these are various steps. Whether all the steps are used or not is almost irrelevant for this example. So we have the goods inwards, and the goods inwards go to goods inwards inspection. Having received the goods, say the raw materials, it's important to inspect them to make sure the raw materials are of good quality. The company receives what it anticipated it would receive. It hasn't received inferior goods, for example. And having inspected the goods, it goes to the stores. Bearing in mind, as I said, depending on the philosophy of the management or on the technicalities of this particular product and so on, it may be that the company is able to use just in time and there would be no stores. It would go perhaps straight into production. But let's just say in our simple example here, goods inwards, the goods are inspected and then they go to the stores. But as I said, it could be goods inwards straight to the stores. So that's an alternative. Now the stores goes to manufacturing because the manufacturing draw off the stores. But it could be, as I said, it goes straight from goods inwards to manufacturing. So it could be, depending on how the company is structured, the philosophy of the management, the technicalities of production, the conditions in the market for raw materials and supplies and so on, it could be that the goods inwards go straight to manufacturing. And from manufacturing it goes to goods inspection. The completed goods are inspected to see if they're the right quality for the customer. But of course, if total quality management was implemented, then the workers and the managers throughout the production stages would be monitoring the quality as it went through. So perhaps it doesn't need a final inspection. It's been inspected all the way through the production process to ensure its good quality. Nonetheless, if it goes through to completed goods inspection, it goes from there to distribution. But as I said, It could go from manufacturing to distribution if the company has got quality procedures in place right throughout the production process. So you can see how process mapping is starting to work out. I haven't inserted the symbols here and precisely what documentation and who's involved in the decision processes. I haven't used an orthodox process mapping diagram like one we met earlier, but you can see here the decision processes. It would be useful to take this diagram and then write out in detail, using the symbols we talked about earlier, the complete process map with documentations, decision nodes, and so on. Processes need to be reviewed and improvements made on existing processes. It's always the case that management looks critical at processes to try and see what improvements can be implemented, what changes can be brought about which will benefit the production process and lead to more efficiencies. Process maps need to be examined and errors must be detected. For example, the elimination of wastes, delays and duplication of activities. And that's the advantage of process mapping. It highlights where activities are duplicated. And sometimes within sophisticated and very long production systems, processes could be easily duplicated, unnecessarily duplicated. The goods pass through essentially the same process twice. It sounds totally unnecessary, but it could do. It could be because faulty design in the production process, or it could be there's a lot of waste in production, again, which could be stamped out if there was a proper understanding of the whole process and a proper process map had been developed. Bottlenecks and delays are a big issue, so it's important to understand how long does it take for the process to take. Each, if you like, sub-process, how long does it take before it moves on to the next part of the overall process? And if it's taking a long time, it might be that it has to wait for its turn to go on to the next machine. That may be symptomatic of a shortage of that facility. It may mean an extra machine should be acquired, or the machine should be run for a longer duration, or it may indicate some remedial measure is required to eliminate the bottleneck or to reduce the delays. Process improvements ensure better coordination of work practices, reducing costs, deployment of staff, resource allocation, improved quality and efficiency. I suppose what that third point is saying is that management will have more knowledge of the processes and will be able to look at the processes more critically and more analytically to try to make improvements, spot issues, deal with the issues and speed up the whole process through greater rationalization, greater understanding of what's happening, and critical resources, including personnel, will be able to be allocated to the functions more rationally, so that there is a better match of skills with requirements. So it all should lead to a more streamlined, a more efficient production system, and one with more quality right throughout the process. So these are some of the issues that we can identify when we discuss process mapping. It's an important tool within the armory of the management of particularly businesses which are in the production sector. If we're talking about essentially office routines with the production of services, again, process mapping can lead to efficiencies and lead to better output and throughput. but because services tends to be more personalized, it's not always the case, I should say, that we're able to get a more precise process map as the one we've presented here. But that's all we're going to deal with in this session, so let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.